Welcome to AgriMinds, the podcast where we explore the intersections of personal growth and professional success in the ag industry. I'm Kacee, your host. Thank you for joining me as we dive in to the different strategies and insights that will help you level up your life and career. From mental health to leadership development, we're going to cover it all. So sit back and get ready to grow with AgriMinds. Welcome to another episode on the AgriMinds Podcast. I am so thrilled for today's conversation. I've got guest John Sachse with me today. He is a farmer rancher out in Kansas. He is an Army National Guard guy, and he is also a mindset coach. And so I'm pumped to bring him on because if you've been listening to any episode of mine, that I love talking about mindset. I love talking about the agriculture industry. I love talking about working through things that you just have to push through, right? And so I feel like John can bring so much perspective and possibly some tips and tricks for us as well. So welcome to the AgriMinds Podcast.
Kacee, thank you so much for having me. This is a privilege. Anytime that I'm asked to speak in front of people or be on a podcast, basically anytime that I can serve and try to add value to others, I am all for it. I'm so excited that we're finally able to connect, and I appreciate this opportunity. You mentioned, Kacee, that I'm kind of a man that wears numerous hats: Army National Guard officer, farm and ranch with my family, a little more on the cattle side than the farming, but we do farm as well. Do some animal health consulting for a company, and I've already forgotten the other thing. I do so many things. Work with individuals on their mindset. But Kacee, those are just the what's and the how to accomplish my bigger overarching why, which is, Kacee, I wake up each day and try to add value and serve just one person every day. That's my goal every day when I wake up. I'm huge on morning routines and visualization, and spending time on focusing how I want the day to go. And when I can wake up and just think, hey, I just want to serve and help somebody, just one person, I don't care who it is, it kind of crafts the day how I want it to go. And those are just the what's and the how to accomplish that bigger overarching goal of serving and adding value to those around me.
Oh, I cannot wait to get into the what's in the hows. But before we get there, would you mind just sharing a little bit about how you got to be the mindset coach? The one thing that you forgot to mention just a minute ago. How did you go from serving our country and working on the farm and the ranch to saying, you know what, I think I'm going to give this whole coaching thing a go? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So it really kind of stems, to be honest, with me, my personal self as a man living in rural America. I need help myself with a lot of different things, and I'm the first to admit that. And I think men, when they are strong and comfortable with themselves, they're more aware of kind of what they need and what's going on. My wife and my wife is not originally from agriculture. She's from Wichita, which would be the largest city in Kansas, and she not initially from ag. And we had the privilege and the opportunity to move back to the farm several years ago. And we moved back right before New Year's Eve, into December, after Christmas, and it was very cold, very snowy. We typically calve mid-January through mid-March, and so our first really several months, 6 months of being back at the farm, it was very cold, snowy, long nights with calving. She wasn't used to agriculture in general, especially long nights, and we got hit with some pretty bad winter weather that we lost quite a few calves that first season, and it was a very dark point in our marriage, and me personally feeling like, hey, I'm the provider here, and I feel like I'm failing. And so kind of some lessons learned from that helped me realize that I needed my own help. I felt like I was a man kind of on my own island here in rural Kansas, rural Midwest. And so that kind of began to stir my thought process of are there other guys feeling this way? Am I the only one? And you can probably relate to this, Kacee, but I know being in college, you're just surrounded by friends, you're surrounded by like-minded individuals. And then when you go back to potentially your family farming operation, you can just feel like you're on an island. You're not around anybody your age. The average age of producers is so much older nowadays and just keeps increasing. And so my wife and I were kind of in a dark place, and that began my kind of avenue of going hard on personal development and focusing on me and just self-awareness of what's going on. And then kind of secondly to that, as an officer in the military, just kind of naturally you're tasked with mentoring younger individuals and soldiers on the enlisted side and younger officers. And just through some military training, I've been placed in that opportunity to mentor and just offer to others some of the experiences, lessons that I've learned, and that kind of sparked about a year or so ago that interest to maybe I should work with people on a more formal basis, and so that's kind of where the thought process for Ranch Fit, the coaching program, came to be.
That's fascinating. I wish I could find a statistic that showed how many coaches had a hard spot in their marriage right before they became a coach, because I feel like it would be a lot. And, I have a story sort of similar of, I was on this journey to work on my own mental health and my own personal growth. And during that time, like, I was struggling just with everything, with my career, with my marriage, with my relationships with friends and family. And I felt really lost. And, we were living out in Missouri at the time and didn't have a support system. And so, like, that's really where it began for me. And then through that process of taking leadership classes and working in professional development, and then also adding in my own personal development as well, that's where I discovered, wow, I want to share with other people these tools that I'm using. And then that kind of is what developed me as a coach. And it kind of just happened. And I mean, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, what do you want to be when you grow up? Being a coach was not something that ever crossed my mind. And so it just kind of developed, and I'm so thankful for it because, like you said, it feels so good to help someone else and to serve other people in a way that is helping them and their quality of life. It is so, so cool. And so I'm super curious to know, is there like a common theme of challenges or obstacles that people are trying to work through and overcome that are your clients? Like, is there a common thing that's like, this just seems like the thing people come to me to help them with?
Well, first of all, Kacee, I want to congratulate you on your coaching, AgriMinds. I know you just started, I think, kind of your next round of coaching. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, it looks like a fantastic program. I've since we first connected, I've been following you a little bit, and so I want to congratulate you on that because it is so needed, just in general, more broadly, but especially within agriculture. We tend to not always focus on bettering ourselves, so then we can go out and better serve those around us. So thank you for doing what you're doing. There's a lot of different things. I would say both in the military community and in ag, and then I mean certainly if you're just an entrepreneur, you own whatever business, it seems like people don't, just in general, they need a lot of help with identifying their why, their purpose, at a deeper level, not just the surface thing. Hey, my parents farmed and ranched, and so that's what I'm gonna do. Well, that is more surface level, and it seems like people are just, I've heard the term walking generalities, so they're just bumping into one another throughout life. They're kind of on a path, but they don't really know exactly where they're going. And One thing you learn early in officer candidate school for the military is you're the one behind the scenes creating the plans. The Joes actually go out and accomplish your vision, your here's the plan that we've set forward. But if you're not being intentional with your days, you can just kind of get lost in life. And I don't know how else to say that any better, but it seems like people um, in the past have told me I have certain talents with what I'm doing in life, and I've just kind of wound up here, and I'm just kind of here. People aren't intentional with their days, the things that they do. Um, you know, it, I don't know how you get from point A to point B just by wandering. And I am an avid runner, and so when I set out to I have a goal of running in the Boston Marathon someday. Well, that's a super hard goal to obtain, and you have to identify the roadblocks that will get you there. You have to first know where you're currently at. Then you've got to identify where you're wanting to get to. Kind of visualize what are those and think about what are those roadblocks in between. But also, just as equally as important, you've got to set many goals along the way. I can't just go train for the Boston. I've got to I want to focus on running a 5K, a 10K, a half, other marathons just to be able to then qualify for the Boston. And so there's all these mini goals to kind of work back from, and people just tend to need help. They almost need help from an outside source, an outside somebody that's out of the weeds. In farming and ranching, you're busy with the day-to-day chores and tasks, and you kind of get bogged down with that. But if you don't learn how to delegate certain things so you can remove yourself from some of those more menial tasks that are important, and you've got to get those things done, like chores, for instance. But it seems like farmers and ranchers need help from somebody suggesting, hey, let's take some time to pull back here, delegate some tasks to somebody else who's equally as good at that or better, and spend some time working on your business and not necessarily just in it. I think a lot of times we don't um, really think about the direction that we're heading. We're just kind of wandering in life.
That seems to be a pretty common challenge or obstacle or something that people want help with my clients as well. Is I think I know what I need to do. I just want someone to validate it or help me get clear on what the steps are and how to actually take that step. And when you were talking, I got the visual of, you kind of saying like people are just kind of like bumping into each other, just kind of like going around and not getting from point A to point B with intention. And the visual I got was I'm picturing these cars and like the little arena for bumper cars, right? Like, you want to get over here, but you're just banging on the walls and you're banging on these other cars as you're going. You have the choice and you have the ability to pick your car up out of that arena and set it on a track that's going somewhere else. You can go in a straight lane. You could pick that up and put it in like a NASCAR arena where you're just going in circles and circles and circles and circles. You're not banging up against everybody necessarily. Occasionally you might hit a wall, or occasionally you might hit another car, but you're just going in circles and circles and still not getting anywhere. Or you can say, I'm going to go on this straight and narrow, and I'm going to get from this city to this city. I'm going to intentionally go from this point to this point. And I don't think people realize that they have that choice. And sometimes it just takes an outside perspective or an outside like coach or someone to say, did you know you don't have to do it that way? Like, you're in the car and you're working and you're doing an activity, but it's not with intention, and you're making things way harder than they need to be. And sometimes it does just take, like you said, sometimes it's just a coach, sometimes it's a mentor or a peer. Someone can like just say one thing that, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. And I did the same thing, John. And you mentioned you having a coach or a therapist or someone to help you through different seasons of your life. Same. And I think that if you work with a coach who has never had their own coach or has never had someone to bounce ideas off of or support or at least talk to, I would probably encourage you to look at a different coach, because
Mhm.
when you truly see the power in having that person in your corner that can bring out these ideas, can help you with tips or tricks or tools to get you to the place you want to go, it's a whole, like, it is an experience like nothing else.
And you saying that reminds me that I get, it is awesome to me that each person has everything that they need inside of them. When I do, so I teach resiliency training at my National Guard unit. We typically do it once a month at our drills. But that's what I like to share with our soldiers at the unit and people that I coach. We each, all of us, have the resiliency um tools inside of us. We just sometimes we haven't identified them, or we need somebody to point them out or help us to unlock the box for us. But that's the cool thing, that it, I wasn't born more resilient than you, and you weren't born more than somebody else. We're equal in that sense. Some people have identified what clicks and how to be resilient, and others haven't. And our brains are so malleable, and that they're always forming and shifting to the experiences that we're learning. And that's what I love, is just knowing that uh, I'm not necessarily any better than anybody else. I'm very self-aware and spend time in a lot of thinking so I can be self-aware to kind of begin to start to unlock some of that stuff. But we each have it, and that is refreshing to me, to know that somebody might be struggling now, but they don't have to be, kind of thing. And like you said, a lot of coaches have come from maybe harder backgrounds, or had certain things that they had to go through, and those individuals make some of the best coaches, because we've walked what the clients are walking also.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a keynote that I did a couple of months ago. It was on balancing work and family. And at the end of it, we had this open Q&A. And one of the guys asked the question of, listen, I've gone through years of trainings and development, leadership, blah, blah, blah. But all of that stuff basically escapes my mind when I'm in the heat of the moment, and I black out and I forget. And so it's kind of been this question that's just been so present for me since that a couple of months ago. And so I've been really trying to think about, well, how do we, in the heat of the moment, work through those situations? And the example he gave was, say I've worked a long day and stuff's not really going the way that I want it to at work. And when I come home, I take it out on my family. They'll do one thing and it triggers me and it sets me off. Next thing I know, I'm in the heat of the moment and I'm wanting to take it out on my family. What are your tips or tricks through that? And I said, the very first thing that came to mind, because obviously I hadn't prepared for that question. So I think that's why it's so important for me to just fine tune my answer. And so I would love to talk with you about like what your perspective was, but my initial thoughts were, what kind of person do you want to be on the other end of that? Once you have calmed down, what do you want to look back and wish that you did or wish that you said? And so we kind of broke that down a little bit, but it ultimately came back for me of, we've got to put the right systems in place so that way when we are in the heat of the moment, we know what to do. Because I think a lot of the work that people are doing are, here's all these experiences. Now, how do I work through the trauma? Or how do I get back on good terms? Or how do I kind of undo some of the damage that's been done? Whereas some of the work that I really want to be focusing on is proactive and setting you up for a success. So when you are under pressure, you are in the heat of the moment, you are going to have this challenge, which is inevitable. How do we put the right things in place so that way when they happen, we're ready for them? And so I'd love to hear if you have any kind of a better answer than what I gave, but do you have any tips or tricks or even tools that you use to help people put the right systems in place, get the right mindset into the position it needs to be, so that way when they are faced with adversity, they are equipped and ready to tackle it in a way that is less damaging?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to talk about that. And my response is not necessarily better than yours. And that is very tough when you don't know what question is coming your way and you're in front of people. And I am sure that you handled it well. But when you ask that question, one of the first things that comes to mind is both men and women handle negatives or roadblocks, things that are coming our way. We handle them completely different. In fact, my wife and I, while we were drinking our coffee this morning, we were talking about this with something that she's going through. She is a coach as well, and so there's something that has kind of hit her hard here recently, and we were talking through that. And I want to just first acknowledge that men and women handle setbacks completely different. One is not better than the other. They're just different. So for instance, my wife, and I'm not grouping all women and all men together like this, but probably more broadly speaking, women first want to feel the emotion. They feel the emotion first, and they maybe sit in that a little bit before they think of solutions. And maybe this is just my wife too, but I, on the other hand, when I'm faced with a problem, my mind first goes, as a man, first goes to, well, what's the solution for this? I try to fix it. Obviously, we're both married. A lot of times women don't want things to be fixed right away. They just need somebody to be a listening ear. And so my wife eventually thinks of a solution, but she first wants to accept the negative thing. She doesn't want to brush it off, and she's in the emotion first, to where I try to avoid the emotion first. I think of a solution, then later on the emotion hits me probably at an opportune moment. So one one is not necessarily better than the other, but I think if we can acknowledge that as men, we need to maybe not brush the negative off right off the bat. We need to experience it and feel it, and in addition, also still act and come up with a solution. So I think we could meet in the middle and more harmony, probably a little bit easier. I'd also say that if we have established certain habits that reduce stress, physical fitness, there's a ton of power in visualization, a morning and a evening routine. There's a list of things, but if we have core habits that we've established over the course of months and years, we can, when we're hit in the face with an obstacle or roadblock, we can fall back to those habits. So an example I like to give is Navy SEALs or Army Rangers, Army Delta Force. If you're in combat, if you've seen movies that are war related, they are under tremendous pressure and stress, and things start hitting the fan, and you'll observe that the communication tends to get better. They think and move as one. That's because they're hitting a negative or an obstacle, and they're falling back to the habits that they've established over a long period of time. It doesn't happen overnight, but they're falling back to habits that help get them to the elite level that they're at. So if we can begin to create habits in our lives that we can fall back on, I think that's tremendously helpful. And then I'd also offer up having I'm huge at being present and in the moment, but also thinking of the bigger, more broad picture in life. So at the beginning of the call, for instance, when you kind of ask what I do, my overarching why is I'm a huge man of faith. I'm a follower of Christ. And so everything that I do falls under that umbrella. And so if we can have a longer term view of life or our business, our farm and ranch operations, our relationship, whatever it might be, those things that might hit us on one day, like you lost a calf during calving season, those we still have to acknowledge that it's still rough. It's hard to get through, but that is a small, relatively speaking, to the long term in mind. That's a short term kind of speed bump, if you will. Again, we have to acknowledge it. We can't ignore that. It's still rough to get through that, but though when we have a longer term perspective and view on our businesses and all those things in our lives, those shorter term things, we've kind of lessened their impact on us, if you will. And that has immensely helped me, just shifting that perspective and mindset on, changing how I view, X, Y, and Z that might be negative. That has helped me. I've offered that up to some of my clients, and I know in the military that's super helpful to know that you got to just be focused on the longer game plan to help you overcome those shorter things, on the day to day that might happen to you.
That's so good. And I loved what you said at the very beginning of that was most men and women think about and approach those types of situations differently. And I think that's so true. It's hard for us to comprehend it because clearly I can't see from your perspective, but I think it's pretty clear when we start to say like, well, why did you do that first? Or how come you don't see this? And some layers that I like to add to this awareness are through things like our personality tests or, stuff like that. Like I think the Enneagram and DISC and, Myers-Briggs are so helpful. But obviously my favorite is the Working Genius and the Enneagram, and pairing those two things up to see, okay, why do I feel this way? Why am I reacting this way? But also, what can I do about it? Like, how do I deal with it in my way? Is so cool. And I think that's why I promote the Working Genius so much. It's involved in AgriMinds. It is something I use with my one-on-one clients too, because it's like, well, why does coming up with a solution tend to be your first reaction? Coming up with a solution is not my first reaction. It is, why did this happen to begin with, is my first reaction. But somebody with the genius of wonder is going to default to asking those why questions first. And someone with, the genius of ideation may tend to come up with a solution first and want to fix it. But then you've also got 4 other geniuses. Someone who says, I want to complete something. Someone who says, I want to motivate someone. Someone who says, you know what, I'm going to step in and help you in this. Like there's so many other things. And that reminded me of this exercise or example that Brene Brown used in her book, Atlas of the Heart, where she talks about emotions and how most people have like 5 to 8 key emotions that they think that they experience, being like anger, joy, sadness. Those are like the standard emotions. But in actuality, there are hundreds of emotions. And when we do the work to say, how do I actually feel? Is it anger or is it rejection? Is it loneliness? Is it hurt in another way? And so like when you dive into and do the work, like you said, it's about the mindset, but it's also getting really familiar with yourself and saying, how do I actually feel about this? And some questions I always ask myself in my own situations where I'm struggling, but also encourage clients to think about is initially say, is this a fact or is this an opinion? First of all. And if it is more of like an opinion, is this a fear? If it's a fear, what am I afraid of? Is it being hurt? Is it getting uncomfortable? Is it being rejected? Is it experiencing something that I wasn't prepared to experience? And so, as someone is being challenged with a difficult decision or experiencing a situation that is unpleasant or conflicting with their peers, I always like to equip them with questions to help them get to the root of why they're feeling what they're feeling and how to move past it. What are some like key questions that you ask your clients or kind of help them ask themselves as they move through stuff like that?
Well, one thing I like to share is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called the gap and the gain. It's a concept and based off of a book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, but acknowledging where basically, so the concept of the gap and the gain is, we are always comparing ourselves to our future selves or a future ideal, and we're always going to be focused on the negative. And so I try to get people to see where they're at currently, and then ask questions that then helps identify to them where they were at, where they've come. I want them to see, here's where I'm at today. A week ago or 3 months ago or 5 years ago, this is where I was. And they can begin to stack the successes and focus on the positives of, hey, here's how far I've come. And so it's a powerful, I mean, if you get the concept, it is game changing. It's life changing. I think of just my days differently with this thought process of not focusing on where I want to be, because if you're focused on personal growth, where you want to get to, you're still moving, and where you want to get to is always constantly moving, and you're never going to close that gap. And so that's gap thinking. You're always going to be losing essentially. But if you can focus on, here's where I'm at, this is how far I've come, you can stack all that, and it's a confidence boost for sure. And the power of compounding interest, that Benjamin Franklin talked about. If you can stack all of those positives, it immensely changes how you view things. So I get people to acknowledge, hey, here's where you're at. We still have somewhere where we're headed. You want to run a marathon, you want to run a half marathon, or look for a new job, whatever the thing is. We still have to kind of know the direction in which we're headed, but let's focus our days and our time on seeing how far we've come. So I ask questions that get them to see, hey, I have come a long way, and they begin to gain that confidence, and that can certainly help.
That is so powerful. I think when you understand that concept, you're right. That's the transformation piece, because where we're going is an ever evolving, ever changing target, because we're collecting new pieces of information about ourselves, about our environment, about opportunities all the time. And so where we're going it's a moving target. Yes. But when you understand, here's what I've come from and here's where I'm at today, and seeing the growth and seeing the progress, even understanding that there might have been a time or a place where you've taken 5 steps, but then went back 3 steps, it's still 2 more steps than where you were. And you will never unlearn and never go down a level in your growth, because you've acquired that information, and that's not anything that someone can take away from you. And so there's never going to be a point where you've gotten to a position less than where you were, because you've gained more insight. Now it's up to you, though, to determine what you do with that.
Yeah, and I'm huge on I have almost eliminated failure from my dictionary, just the language that I use, because if you can get to the point where you're viewing a preconceived failure, if you can view that as an opportunity to learn from, it just changes how you even just feel each day. You just, the weight is lifted off of you, the pressure is off, knowing that, hey, my son, quote unquote, lost a t-ball game, or
We sold a group of steers. They didn't make as much as we had anticipated. Those could be viewed as failures, but those are opportunities to learn from. My son would learn, and he's in T-ball, and so everybody wins. But if you have that experience and can learn, hey, here's how I can do something better. It's just a learning experience. There are no failures when you can enter into a mindset of we're just being. I'm learning things that are going to help me over the course of a long period of time, and I wouldn't probably get to that next level without having learned some of those things.
Yeah, John Maxwell has a book called Fail Forward, and he really dives into that. And if you don't know, I'm a huge John Maxwell fan, and Maxwell Leadership is actually the program that I went through to become a certified coach. And that's where a lot of that personal and professional intertwining began for me, because it's so hard to work on yourself and it not affect your career and it not affect those people around you as well. And so to understand, okay, I'm going to fail forward, which means I personally feel like, this affected me in my emotions and my mindset. But when you take that lesson and you learn from it, it impacts every area of your life. And one of the visuals that I help clients kind of break down and see is like, imagine your life as levels in like a Mario game, right? Like Mario and Luigi, right? Like you've got all these different levels. Picture him running on this platform and then jumping up onto another platform and then running and then jumping up onto another platform. Like there's all these levels that you've got to experience. And each one of those levels has a thing you've got to overcome, whether it is a pipe that you have to jump over or a Venus flytrap that's going to eat you, or a block that you're going to bump your head on. Whatever's on that level, there is a thing you have to pass. But what's really cool is once you've accomplished that level, even if you fall through the pipe and quote unquote die in the game, you pick right back up on that level. And then you just keep moving forward. And so I always try to like at least give someone that visual to say, oh, I'm never going to like have to start over from the beginning and relearn everything. You are prepared. You've understood what's on that current level. Now you know how to defeat that level. You know how to overcome the pipe that you're jumping over. You know when to duck to not get hit by the block. You know when to move over and around the Venus flytrap and avoid it. So like you've learned something. So even though you may have quote unquote failed that level, you're going to learn what to do differently for the next time you get the chance to overcome that level. And when I started sharing that with people, they're like, whoa, that's so cool.
And if you were on that personal development path, you are so much far, even if you're quote unquote failing at whatever level and you were here, you are so much further ahead of where you used to be. And I'm a huge proponent of doing at least one hard thing a day. That can be a lot of different things. I personally take cold showers 6 days a week. Sunday I get a warm shower, but it is something I've been doing for years and I hate it still. But the invigoration that I have after the shower. And so where I'm going with this is if we can do the hard things and challenge the narrative, push the envelope, we're constantly moving in the direction and growing. Growth happens, when, hey, I want to stop running at mile 13, but you push past to mile 16, that the growth is on the other side of the obstacle. And so if we can get in a mindset of on a daily basis doing at least one hard thing a day, your mind, it'll start to prime your mind, and you'll even search for opportunities to challenge yourself and push the envelope. And when you're constantly doing that, you're constantly hitting those roadblocks and obstacles. And then when you keep moving past and beyond what you thought was possible, that's where the true growth happens. And it's a whole nother world on the other side of that. And that's why I love physical fitness so much. even, on the farm and ranch, there's physical things that we're doing, picking up feed sacks, putting seed in the planter, and those are great. But if you can prioritize, uh, walking or running or lifting, that's outside of the normal farm things, you just are, you're, the mental clarity that you gain is powerful, and that just flows. The confidence that you gain from going for a run and going farther than you thought you could do, that confidence that you gain just flows into other areas of your life, and then you begin to accomplish things on the business side or in your relationships that you didn't think were possible because you were pushing the envelope on the physical stuff, and it flows over into the mental space as well.
You're so right. It is so intertwined. And, you know, I can look back to an example of running the auger cart, right? Like, I'll have my butt in that tractor seat for hours and hours and hours. And then at the end of the day, you're almost in a, for me personally, it kind of drains my brain. And I can recall like having the conversation with Amanda, and I don't remember what episode it was on. She's the Farm Fit Mama. And so she talks about
Yes.
physical health on the farm and utilizing the things that you have around your place. And, so anytime I'm in the auger cart and I'm waiting for the combine to get filled, I can either sit there, twiddle my thumbs, or like when we're just opening up a field, like clearly, you've got some minutes there where you're waiting for, the field to get opened up. So it takes a little longer. And I can either sit there and I can probably snack, which sometimes I feel like is important because you need to fuel your body, right? Yep. Or you can get out and just like walk around the tractor, or if there's some woods right next to you, just like get yourself in nature and move your body a little bit. And when I was running the auger cart this harvest and just getting out and walking around, it just helps your brain in so many ways. Like you don't even realize it, but hours go by where you don't get out of that tractor. Mm-hmm. And you're breathing the same air and you're hearing the same humming and you're not moving your body. So many hours goes by. And I think the same can be said for working, right? Like we'll spend hours in front of our desk, not even realizing, oh my gosh, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I didn't eat lunch yet. No wonder your head's hurting. No wonder you're feeling depleted. And so some tips that I share with my clients, and I talk about this quite a bit, is I have this hexagon timer. And it's got 5, 15, 30, 45, and 60 minutes on this timer. And so if I'm trying to work through a task, I could get engulfed in it, like really, really, really into it, and time will go by. And so I'll set a timer for like 45 minutes and give myself, okay, you can go like crazy for 45 minutes, get your work done. But then when that 45 minutes is up, you need to set another timer for at least 5 minutes to get up, get a water break, put something in your belly, like something to get yourself moving. And so those are just super, super, I mean, you could put a timer on your phone, but just understanding just how correlated your mental and your physical health are tied together. And when you pay attention to, I need to do some mindset work, y'all, you need to also do some physical work too. And I'm not saying go out and train for a half marathon. I'm saying just get up and take a walk around your house, or park 10 more spaces in the parking lot away from where you normally do to give yourself 2 more minutes of walk time. Just something as simple as that.
And it doesn't have to be those big things. We all have just know we all have the flexibility and the freedom to basically create that space. You mentioning all of that reminds me of, sometimes I still have issues, but not as much with this. When I'm training for a half or a full marathon and I get into the heavy flow of it, there's times where, if you're doing a 2-hour run, that eats into your work day. And then, so it's like, well, do I, rotary mow pasture, or it's like I'm trying to do a trade-off kind of thing. But I got to the point a few years ago where it's like, how about I just run rather than having somebody drive me out to the tractor, or maybe I leave the truck, that kind of thing. How about I run to the tractor, leave it in the pasture, and I just run there in the morning, and then I can get kind of another run on my way back if you don't want to drive the tractor back and forth. Just stuff like that it's freeing to know, oh, I don't have to do the rotary mowing and not the run today, or I'm going to do the run and not the rotary mowing, or vice versa. You can do both. Just be flexible with it, think through it, and you can tackle both. And it doesn't have to be something big like that. Like you said, I love that example of just let's park a little bit further from the store and get a little bit extra 1 or 2 more minute walk in. And I'm huge on going one more. So doing one more thing, one more phone call, one more text, one more conversation, one more rep. And when you can begin to find opportunities to, hey, go 1 more minute on this thing or one more rep, man, it is a game changer, and your mind over time primes itself to then hunt for opportunities to go one more. Yesterday on my run was it was a 30-minute speed interval, and so I basically for 90 seconds I ran at a 5K pace, and then you have a recovery pace for 45 seconds. You do that for 10 rounds, and I have primed my mindset over time to go one more. And so at the end of on my app, when it was saying, hey, stop, the 90 seconds is done for this round, I was going a couple more seconds each time. And when you can basically group all that up over the course of that run, I basically got an extra, almost another round, or maybe a half a round to a round extra in there, just from incrementally going a little bit more, pushing a little bit harder. It doesn't have to be all at once, but over the course of time, all those little one mores add up and can just be a huge game changer.
So this is totally off the cuff, so be prepared. But I think it's not as hard for people, especially in ag, to push it and to go a little bit harder and to work a little bit longer. And so I want to challenge this and kind of see if we can discuss the opposite, right? So we're so used to going and grinding and getting the thing done and working hard, but what about slowing down? And what about those people who are almost obsessed with got to get one more pass put in, got to do one more load, got to, whatever. What about those people that struggle with not doing one more and they need to maybe take it down a notch? What are your thoughts around that? Or do you have any tips on for people who may need to remember it's okay to rest? You don't have to constantly be going after one more. You don't have to constantly be chasing or doing or, pushing yourself. It's okay to take a break, and it's okay to slow down. And how does that impact your mental health and your physical health?
I love that. I love that question. I love that. And I think I am a terrible person to be asked this question, because I just naturally gravitate towards doing more, adding more to my plate than I should. But I'm getting to the point, probably the last year or so, as I'm getting a little bit older and my boys are getting older, and family is so important to me. I'm getting to the point where I am acknowledging that I need to slow down and take more, prioritize taking more breaks throughout my day. My wife is huge on telling me, hey, just spend 10 minutes with the boys. To them, 10 minutes probably seems like 2 hours. To me, I feel like, oh, it's only 10 minutes. What is that going to do? But, to somebody who's young or kids, that they have no concept of time, and that probably seems like you spent a few hours with them. So I'm getting to the point, I'm better of knowing I need to stop. And so I think it comes in seasons where if we need to be in a season where we need to ride momentum, I think we need to push forward. But I think there's also seasons to back off, and that's going to be, I can't tell you or anybody else what those seasons, the length needs to be or when they are. you kind of have to figure that out on your own. But there's seasons for me on the farm that need to be a little more go, and then seasons where I need to think in advance, hey, maybe for these couple of weeks or maybe it's a month, I need to not do that extra thing. So I think it for sure comes in seasons, and then just having the mindset of maybe focusing, and this could be all throughout the year, but focus on needle moving activities each day. So I'm notorious personally for, I'm very type A personality. I'm certainly a doer. And oftentimes I load my day with too many things, and I just call them things. They're just small menial tasks. I get satisfaction from crossing things off my list, but I need to personally do better at saying, hey, what's 3 needle moving things that I can do today that are huge that my business needs from me? Let's focus on those 3 things and not the 12 to 15 other smaller tasks. So I think just shifting our view on our workload each day helps, when we can focus on the bigger things and not all the small menial tasks. But there, like I said, there are seasons where we just have to, maybe we're the only person that knows how to do X, Y, and Z, and it's just what we have to go through. But I do agree with where you're headed with that question, that there are seasons where we need to pull back and loosen the reins, and that'll be different for each person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear that a lot too, of like, I don't really want to keep developing, right? Like, I'm burnt out on personal development, or I'm burnt out on professional growth and all those things. And I can totally see that. I'm the kind of person who I love to learn more. It fills my cup up to learn, but knowing that that's not the same for everyone, but also recognizing in my own personal life, there may be a season where it's like, Kacee, stop reading self-help books and read something fun. And you know what I mean? And so that's my version of rest, is stop learning and change your content that you're absorbing and get creative. Because I noticed, like, I love to get creative. Like, if you'd have looked back to my high school, like, I was in art class and I went to art camp, and I love to get really creative and paint and draw and sculpt and make stained glass, lampshades and all the things. And I haven't done any of that in years. And I just really miss that. And so I challenge myself to stop learning and replace my personal development time, because I have that blocked on my calendar, and make that a creative time too. And I've got this little journal book that every page has a prompt, like draw a dinosaur, draw a dream catcher, draw what you think the wind looks like. And it's just like every day is a prompt. And even if the pictures are awful, because keep in mind, I have not honed in on that skill in a while, and it looks terrible, and I hope nobody ever finds that book, but it just gives me that creative challenge that challenges the opposite side of my brain. And so even if it's just something like that, of like, you don't have to constantly be learning and growing and sharpening skills, because that can get exhausting if that's not how your cup is filled. My cup gets filled by learning, but I also look at the Wheel of Life exercise that we work on in week 2 of AgriMinds, which this will air the week that we do the Wheel of Life in AgriMinds. So there'll probably be some posts about it on social media too. But the Wheel of Life exercise looks at all the areas in your life: your personal creativity, your romance, your career, your religion, your physical health, your mental health, like all the areas, social, recreation, all the things. And you have to look at that and say, where am I pouring into? But consider all the other factors of, what season of life are you in? What season of the year are you in? If your career is like ours, which it depends on the time of year for harvest and planting, what does your circle of friends look like? What does your family dynamic look like? What are some other things that are taking part of your energy and your mind and that kind of attention? And then put the puzzle pieces together. not just look at what's my career look like. Okay, that must mean I must focus on all these things. And so it does pull from you, but like you said, just bringing awareness to it and understanding you as a unique individual is what's going to help you determine what the next steps for you are in your personal and your professional development, and how your mindset needs to be in order to get to the place that you want to go.
And to dovetail off that, having a filter of, here's all the opportunities that are coming my way with serving on boards at a local level or state or national, work opportunities that come our way, extracurricular, whatever the opportunities, having a filter of, hey, does this feed? You've got to first, I guess, in order for this to work, you've got to be clear on your why and the purpose. You have to know exactly where you're headed, but having a filter of, I'm going to say no to these things, whatever comes my way, if it's not going to directly feed into my why, and I'll say yes to it if it's going to help my family, kind of thing. There was a book I was reading recently, and I can't even recall what it was, and I love to read, but the guy was saying, if I say no to things, if it is going to negatively impact my family dynamics, if it's going to take too much time away than I'm wanting away from my family right now, I say no to it. So he kind of uses his family as a filter, essentially. And if it's going to take him, too much time away from his family and that core value for him, he just easily says no to it. And so I think having whatever filter you need for your life, having a filter can help us determine if something's good for us right now or if it needs to wait.
I want to asterisk the right now part, because just because you're saying no to volunteer opportunities on these boards or whatever, that doesn't mean that in the past it didn't make sense for you to serve on them, or it doesn't mean that in a year or two from now, when your kids get a little older or you're not in the season of your career that you are, that doesn't mean you can't say yes later. It's just right now in this season of life, it doesn't align with all the other things I got going on. And I think you nailed it when you said, when you understand what your why is, those decisions of yes or no are a lot easier to make. And I have experienced this just in the last couple of weeks, because I got really clear on what I want my career to look like and the opportunities I want to say yes to. And it was a really hard decision, because a few months ago, I would have said yes to any opportunity presented to me to be in front of a crowd and to speak. Now, that interest in me to be a speaker has become a lot more. And so I don't have the availability that I used to. And so I had an opportunity to speak for this company, and they had 5 events coming up, and they wanted me to MC and facilitate those meetings, not be the keynote speaker. And it was a lot less money, but it was a lot more exposure to people. Like, there were hundreds of people throughout these 5 events. And I had to get really clear on, okay, I have several bookings for the month of January as a keynote where I can make X amount of money, and I'm only required X amount of time to be gone. That's time away from my family, time away from my clients, time away. It needs to be worth that for me. And then I looked at this other opportunity where it's like, okay, I'm going to get paid less. I'm getting exposure to more people, but I'm also on the road 5 to 7 days because I'm going to have to spend a couple nights out. And so it's like, that to me was a really hard decision that I wanted to, it sounded like way more fun to be the NC than it did the keynote. But where I'm going in my career, it doesn't align. My time versus money exchange didn't add up. My time away from family, like the whole point in me being an entrepreneur was so I could be home more. And saying yes to that opportunity took me away from my family for several days. It's going to prevent me from making the type of money that I want in exchange for my time. And it doesn't give me that reputation that I wanted as a keynote versus an MC. And so I'm just being very honest and very transparent and very vulnerable about my own journey as I'm building. Like, anybody who's listened to any episode so far of the AgriMinds podcast has watched my journey as I've left my job and become a full-time entrepreneur. And so I'm just sharing some very real things that I'm working through, and it's in real time. And it was a very hard decision to say no. And I thought about, okay, what are they going to think? They came after me. They clearly wanted to work with me. Did I just squash any other potential future opportunity with them? And so there were a lot of fears, but when you know what your why is, you're going to start attracting the things that align with it. And you are going to be able to say no to the things that don't make sense. So that way, then you can say yes to the things that do.
And I want to speak to men for a second. You mentioned something with time and just how you were mentioning how it would affect your family, positive or negative. As a man, we feel like we always need, as men, we feel like we always need to be working, always providing. And if we're not doing that, we're failing as a husband, as a father. I don't know why our minds are programmed that way, but I feel like if I take time out of my day, I'm taking time away from doing something work related that could be impactful. But just know, for the men that might be watching, just know that it's okay to take time out of your day and set aside a whole day, to be with your spouse or kids or another family member. I've heard the story of, and I can't think of who was in the story, but it was a father and his daughter. As they got older, they both were adults. I think the girl was in her 20s or 30s at this point, and they were talking about time together as a father and daughter, and going fishing got brought up. And from the daughter's perspective, she was telling a friend, "Hey, my dad took me fishing every month, and it was like a 2-day event. And I mean, it was just a full weekend. It was awesome. We did that all the time." And then hearing the man's perspective, he said, "Hey, I feel like I failed as a father for only taking my daughter once or twice a year to go fishing." So the perspectives and how they remembered it was totally different. To the dad, it was probably only the 1 or 2 times, and he didn't feel like that was probably enough, and he kind of had regret with that. But to the daughter, who had no concept as a young child, no concept of time, that was immensely beneficial, just to have that 1 or 2 trip a year kind of thing. And in her mind, it was such a big impact that she remembered it as if it happened constantly. So, if this is helpful to men that might be listening to your show, just know that, and women too, but just know that spending 15 days, in the morning, and maybe 15 minutes in the afternoon, taking time out of your work day just to be with your kids or spouse, that quality time is much better than quantity sometimes.
Yeah, I think the same thing can be said for, working moms too. And, I kind of
Yes.
had the opposite role of what I wanted. Like, I look at my mom and my grandma, who were both stay-at-home moms, who raised the kids, who made the field meals, who ran around and did the errands. And I thought I was going to be that when I grew up. I'm going to marry this farmer, and I'm going to be the stay-at-home mom, and I'm going to be amazing and barefoot and pregnant all the time. And then that's not what my reality was. And my reality was I was the main breadwinner, and I traveled for a living, and my husband was home with our kids. And, I had this mom guilt. And I think anybody who's in the position of the main provider versus the main caretaker, we all have that. And like, I was so envious of my husband, because like, he got to wake up and take the kids to school and pick them up, and he worked in between. And then I was gone overnight several nights, and I remember missing out on my kid's very first Christmas program, or I didn't get to go help him pick out cupcakes for his class party. And like, I had that same like guilt. And when I left my job and became an entrepreneur, and, the question strategies that I use with clients, I started using on my son. And I'm sure you probably have that now too. Cause like, you and your wife both being coaches, you probably like coach each other without realizing it.
Yes.
And, I started doing this with my son too. And I'll say, to my clients, like, what's something you're grateful for today? Like, let's talk about like, what's going well in your business? What's going well in your day to day? And what are some some challenges that you're facing that we need to like work through. And I've been kind of like kid moding that and like turning it into like kid tones, like, tell me something that made you laugh today at school, or what was your favorite part about this field trip? And, just kind of like coaching my kid just to try it out and, hone it on my craft here. And one of the things that my kid said one time was, I love that you and I got to go have an ice cream date the other day. And I'm like thinking about what that day consisted of. And if I recall, it was a day where I was working all day. It was like an e-learning day. So he was down here in the basement with me while I was on the computer, and he was over there doing his thing and I was over here. And I felt like I didn't give him any attention that day because I was trying to work, and it was like e-learning. And so, I couldn't give him a time and attention, but we both had stuff we had to do. And so at the end, like, I really didn't feel like cooking that night. I really didn't feel like, making supper. And so after we got done with e-learning, we went to town to go pick up my youngest from the sitter. And I was just like, you know what, we'll take 10 minutes. I'll let him have some real one-on-one attention. We pulled into Dairy Queen, grabbed our ice cream, and then just sat out at the picnic table outside. And it was like 5 to 10 minutes. Like, I'm not even kidding. It was a very short amount of time. That changed his whole week. In my mind, I was just saying, I don't want to cook supper, so we're going to grab Dairy Queen, which included ice cream, right? And so I was trying to, in my mind, being lazy and saying, I don't want to cook, so I'm going to give my kid Dairy Queen. When actually that was the highlight of his day, of just having one-on-one attention, even if it was for 8 minutes. And so I loved hearing your story about that too, of like, it was 8 minutes of me trying to take a breath and decompress. But to him, it was one-on-one, undivided attention that made his entire week and made him feel so special. And so if you've struggled with the pull and the demand from all these different areas that we experience as working adults and, maybe parents and spouses, 5 minutes can make or break your day. So whether it's 5 minutes spending time with your kid, 5 minutes undivided attention with your spouse, or 5 minutes eating not in front of your computer, or pulling over. And I mentioned this in my last episode with Kayla, actually it was 2 episodes ago, of if you're the kind of busybody that's like, I just got to go through the drive-through and eat on the road because I got to go to the next appointment or whatever, just pulling over for 5-10 minutes and just being can change your entire day. So don't devalue the importance of 5 minutes.
Yeah, and there is I love that story about taking your kid to Dairy Queen, and no shame in going to Dairy Queen. Although they have done away with my cherry dip cones, but that's another topic. But there is so much. There's so much that we can learn from our kids, just their perspective on things, and then even just, this is so small, but it has such a huge impact. If just playing with your kids, if you get down on the floor and see the world from their perspective, it even just changes how you play, rather than, hey, I'm 6'2", I'm standing in the room playing. I get a different perspective if I'm on my hands and knees at their level, seeing the world through their eyes. But the point I'm trying to make is there's so much that we can learn from our kids on that quality over quantity. So I love that story too.
Oh, this has been such a good conversation, John. I am so thankful that we made this work. And just to, add some context, we were supposed to get on this call, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and I got called to the field and I'm like, I gotta go harvest some corn. I can't make it. And so those are the realities that we face, when we're wearing multiple hats. And so I just thank you for your flexibility. Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, all of the tools and resources that you've shared today, and just being such a great resource for others in our industry through the work that you're doing.
Well, it's been an honor. I could go another hour with you, Kacee, and always happy to serve you in whatever way that you need. But I kind of said at the beginning, but we're not meant to, both men and women, we're not meant to just bump around in life and not know where just kind of aimlessly wandering. I think we're meant to have, each of us are called to have certain experiences that then we can go help and serve those around us. And so if we can just have that filter or that lens in which we view the world and wake up each day, we can help those around us. And then that person, because you helped them, they're going to go out and help somebody that you might not even meet at all. But because you help that person, they can go out and serve others in their sphere of influence.
Yeah, you've got some really cool stuff that you're working on outside of farming and ranching too. So if someone wanted to follow along with you, reach out to you, where can they find you? And also, do you want to share some of the stuff that you've got coming up?
Yeah, for sure. Would love to. Yeah, if I'm on Instagram, if you follow me at Coach John Sachse, I'm active on Instagram daily. If any individual is interested in seeing if coaching, in addition to yours, is a great fit, you want the resiliency kind of mindset pieces as well. I would love to connect with individuals. I've got a link on my Instagram there, but maybe more, not necessarily more important, but I have an upcoming, we do an annual ruck march, a 5K and a 10K at our family's farming operation. It's a great way at the end of the year, December 30th, to utilize and open up, and crops, the cattle are a little more confined to a certain area, and we can better utilize our land at a time where it would just kind of be sitting. And so we've put together a ruck, and essentially, if you don't know what a ruck is, but in a military sense, you would be walking around with the weight that's on your back, in a combat scenario. But essentially, you can bring your own ruck, your own backpack with weight in it, and you can walk on our family's operation. We're offering a 5 and a 10K time competition event December 30th in Easton, Kansas. There's also information on that on my Instagram. And then this is still kind of in the early developmental stages, but next year, kind of towards the end of Q1, we're looking at doing just a men's retreat kind of mindset weekend, day and a half, 2 days, where we invite a select group of men, smaller kind of group of men, to basically work on ourselves both physically. We're going to tear you down physically with some different events that we're putting together, and then build you back up and work on building strong men, both physically and mentally, especially on the mental component, because men tend to not focus on that so much. We go lift weights, we go run, we got the physical component down pretty good, but I think there is huge power in a group of men coming together and acknowledging and being aware of our things that we're struggling with, and just knowing we're not on an island, we're in this together. And so looking at kind of March timeframe in 2024 to put together a men's retreat weekend. I'll have more information on that on my Instagram page, but I am really excited for both of those in-person events.
That sounds amazing, John. Again, thank you so much for being on. I'll be sure to put some links in the show notes, so that way if you want to connect with him, you're more than welcome to do so. Thanks so much for taking the time to share all of this today and being on the AgriMinds podcast.
You bet. Thanks, Kacee.